third, fourth, and fifth grade leaders. We are preparing for August 26th. Can you believe we are at the end of August already and we are heading straight into the fall? This is our second week in our new small groups, and I am praying for your relationships that you're building with your kids in your small group. Thank you for those of you that have been around a while and you're moving to the next grade with your kids. If you're not doing that and you've become an expert where you are, thank you for doing that too. It takes special people to lead in these elementary years because each year developmentally is so very different for every kid. And if we can learn to help kids work through that developmental stage right where they are when they are there, we are helping build those relationships that help them build into a disciple for the future. Your social activity this week is Uno cards. I'm sure your kids are having fun playing Uno and maybe want to have an Uno tournament this year or this week. Feel free to make that as fun as you can possibly do. You're always welcome to have prizes if you need some help finding stickers or prizes or things that would help engage your kids. Please let me know. I have some resources, but I would love for you to own that within your group too and find ways that you connect with your kids. Our story today is about the life of Paul. Now, if you've been with us all summer, you realize that we have taught for a whole series on the life of Paul. But what we need to remember today is not all of our kids have been here with us all summer. So let's not recall all that we learned then, except for to review with kids the things we know about Paul. That Paul killed Christians, and that he had an encounter with Jesus that blinded him, and that through that experience he knew that God was calling him to teach people about Jesus, and that is exactly what Paul did in the later part of his life, as he taught everybody everywhere he was about who Jesus is. So we will be teaching that in our large group. And we want to encourage kids that they can be a part of God's big story too. That first off, they have to believe and love. They have to believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that he came and lived a perfect life, that he died on the cross so that we could have a relationship with God. When they believe all of those things, then they are stepping into being a part of God's big story. And then they can take their next step in learning to share that with other people. Most new Christians, most new people who believe for the very first time, that's what they want to do. They want to tell a lot of people about Jesus. For some people, it's scary because they know where they came from. And so this is a big week for us to encourage kids that as they go through the school year, they can find ways they too can share who God is to them and who Jesus is. So we also get to share the gospel this week. Then in your small group time, you don't have any supplies today. Today you are going to help the kids think with their brains about possibly who might have said some of these statements. I don't think the who is the most important part on these statements, as much as realizing that the statements are a part of the story. And then by learning these statements as a part of the story, we are learning how Paul shared the gospel with even King Agrippa and Festus and other people all around Paul wherever he was, while he was in jail, while he was traveling, while he was writing letters to the churches. He shared Jesus with everybody. So the who part, feel free to do that if you want to, if you think that sunk in through the video. I don't know that that's the most important part. The instructions tell you to have them do an action if it's Paul, or if it's King Agrippa, or if it's Festus. I just read the statements and talk about what that means in the story. And then you have some questions at the end that you should focus on. These are more than the discussion questions that are written in your guide. Your kids are old enough that they can be thinking on these levels and helping process through the truths of Scripture. I'm not saying you can't do the discussion questions. If that's what you usually do in your small group, feel free to do that. We're helping kids learn how to have discussion by doing that. But also, I think we can dig into the truths of Scripture a little bit deeper with kids than our discussion questions have, and help them make those connections with the Bible stories. Then we have our memory verse activity, which has been very cumbersome this series. If you just wanted to play a game and get prizes this week for those that have memorized the scripture verse, the memory verse, do that. If you want to find ways that you can send home the memory verse with the kids, this one is a really good one for all of us to memorize for the entire school year. And we are using these last words of the scripture that says, I have come that they may have life. I want them to have it in the fullest possible way. Oh, I'm sorry. There's my camera. All right, and then you'll pray for your kids. I encourage you to spend really good time with your kids in small groups, helping them to understand the significance of prayer, helping them to understand confidentiality maybe as you share prayer requests, and then also helping them to see how good God is by telling him some of the big things going on in our life, but also trusting him to help take care of those things as we learn and grow together. Thank you for leading. Thank you for everything you're pouring into kids. Next week, we will start a new series in Genesis, and we are going to start a whole survey of the Bible starting in Genesis next week. Thank you for leading. Thank you for what you're doing.